Your entire life, you've been lied to. Not by your parents, not by your teachers, but by the culture itself. The lie is so embedded in how we talk about success that you don't even notice it anymore. We're talking about things like, just be yourself, work hard, and show your work. Honesty is the best policy. Sounds good, right? Feels right. But here's what nobody tells you. Those rules don't actually get you power. They do the opposite. They keep you powerless while everyone else operates on a completely different playbook. 16 years ago, a man named Robert Greene published a book called The 48 Laws of Power. And inside it, he reverse-engineered how powerful people actually operate. Not how we wish they operated, not how we're told they operate, but how they actually do it. And the gap between the lie and the law, that gap is massive. It's where your frustration comes from. It's why you feel stuck watching other people move forward while you're following all the right rules and getting nowhere. Today, we're breaking down 6 of those laws, the ones that directly contradict everything you were taught to believe. And I'm not just telling you what these laws are. I'm showing you exactly why they work, how they flip the script on everything you know about power, and what happens when you actually start operating on these rules instead of the ones that keep you small. The lie they told you. Just be yourself. This one's everywhere, man. Every graduation speech, every motivational Instagram post, every career coach telling you the secret to success. Just be yourself. Be authentic. Be genuine. Let people see the real you, and the right people will connect with it. Sounds perfect. It also sounds helpless. Because if you're struggling right now, if you're not getting the attention, the respect, the opportunities you want, then being yourself clearly isn't working. But we don't blame the advice. We blame ourselves. We think, maybe I'm not being myself enough. Maybe I need to be even more authentic. Maybe I need to share even more of my struggles online. Maybe I need to be more vulnerable. This is where the system breaks. The lie is seductive because it's half true. People do appreciate authenticity. But what the lie doesn't tell you is that absence of yourself is more powerful than presence. The Law 16. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Here's what Robert Greene actually discovered by studying powerful people throughout history. The people with the most influence aren't the ones who are always available, always visible, always performing for the camera. They're the ones who are selectively present. They show up at exactly the right moment. They disappear at exactly the right moment. People don't feel like they know them completely. There's always a mystery left over. Think about it. When you know every single thing about someone, their daily routine, their thoughts about every topic, their morning coffee ritual, their relationship drama, they become predictable. And the moment someone becomes predictable, they lose power. They become consumable. You can take them or leave them. But when someone is mysteriously absent, when they're not posting every day, when you don't know exactly what they're thinking about your comment, when they're selective about who they let close, suddenly, people want in. They're wondering about you. They're checking your profile to see if you posted. They're strategically trying to get your attention in hopes you'll notice them. That's power. That's the reversal. The powerful people you know, whether it's CEOs, celebrities, or that friend who everyone gravitates toward, they're not the most accessible ones. They're the ones who operate on their own schedule. They don't respond to every message. They're not performing for the masses. They're curating moments of presence with specific intention. How this works in real life. Let's say you're building personal brand on social media. Everyone tells you to post every single day. Stay consistent, show the algorithm you're active. But here's what happens. When you post every day, you become white noise in someone's feed. You're just another voice competing for attention. Now, flip the script. What if you posted 2 quality pieces of content per week instead of 7 mediocre ones? What if you were selective about which conversations you engaged with? What if there were gaps in your presence that made people curious about where you were, what you were working on, why you went silent for 4 days? Someone messages you asking why you disappeared. That's engagement. That's them reaching out. That's you having power in the dynamic instead of chasing engagement through posting frequency. The same thing happens in relationships. The people who have the most power are the ones who aren't constantly available. They have their own life. They're not waiting around for your response. When they do show up, it means something. When they finally text back, you feel relieved. That gap creates value. This completely contradicts the just be yourself all the time for everyone narrative. What the law actually says is be yourself selectively. Choose when and where you show up. Make your presence matter by making it scarce. The lie they told you. Transparency is always good. Okay, so we're told that honesty is the best policy. Transparency builds trust. If you're working towards something, you should tell people about it so they can help you. Accountability, right? You want people to know what you're working on, so they support you. And this advice will absolutely destroy any real momentum you build. The mechanism is insidious because it feels good in the moment. You tell your friends you're starting a business. You post about your fitness goals. You tell your family you're going after that promotion. Everyone says, "That's awesome. Good for you." And for a moment, you feel like you've already accomplished it. Your brain gives you a hit of dopamine, as if you've already won. Scientifically, this is called premature self-reward. And it's one of the reasons people with big dreams but small results are always announcing what they're doing instead of actually doing it. But there's another layer that's darker and more important. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. When you reveal your intentions, you hand your competitors a roadmap. You hand jealous people ammunition. You give uncertain people ammunition to discourage you. You make yourself predictable. Here's how the most powerful people operate. They don't announce their moves. They make the move, and then everyone else reacts. By the time people know what you're doing, you're already 3 steps ahead. Think about Elon Musk. When he decides to take Twitter private, he doesn't spend months talking about how he plans to do it and why. He acquires the asset and then reveals the full scope of his intentions after he has leverage. The move happens first. The explanation comes after. Think about how successful entrepreneurs raise capital. They don't go around saying, "I'm trying to raise $10 million for my startup." They build something real first. They create traction. Then when they go to investors, they're not asking permission. They're offering them a chance to be part of something that's already moving. This applies to your career, your personal projects, your relationships. The moment you announce what you're doing, 3 things happen. First, you signal what you want, and people can position themselves against you if they benefit from you not getting it. They can copy your idea. They can work to make sure your plan doesn't come together. Second, you make yourself accountable in a way that actually reduces performance. This sounds counterintuitive, but research on goal setting shows that when you announce your goal publicly, the social reward you get from the announcement reduces your actual drive to complete the goal. You've already been celebrated, so why push harder? Third, you remove the element of surprise and momentum. When you make a major move without warning, people have to deal with the reality of it. They can't prepare against you. They can't sabotage the path because you didn't reveal the path. You just arrived at the destination. How this works in real life. Let's say you're trying to get promoted at work. The lie says, tell your boss what you want. Be transparent about your ambitions. Let him know you're working toward that promotion. That way he can help guide you and prepare you. The law says something different. The law says you don't announce that you want the promotion. Instead, you start operating at the level of the promotion. You take on projects that only people at that level handle. You solve problems that only people at that level solve. You become undeniable. Then, when the opportunity opens up, everyone, including your boss, sees that. You're the obvious choice. You didn't ask for it. You earned it by performing above your station without announcing it. Same thing applies to creative projects. The lie says, announce your book, your course, your product while you're building it. Get people excited. Build an audience waiting for it. This creates real, terrible pressure. Now you're building for the audience instead of building what's actually good. You've created artificial accountability that makes you rush, cut corners, release something mediocre. The law says, build it in silence. Make it so good that when you release it, people don't need to be convinced. The work speaks for itself. There's no announcement campaign because the work is the announcement. This creates a completely different dynamic. You're not begging for attention. You're revealing something that's already powerful. The lie they told you. Communication is about clarity and detail. We're taught that if you want to be understood, you need to explain things thoroughly, give context, provide details, answer all the questions up front, anticipate confusion and explain preemptively. This is taught in school. It's taught in business communication courses. It's the standard framework for good communication. And it's why powerful people barely talk in comparison. When you say too much, you accomplish several things, none of them good. First, you dilute your message. If you're saying one important thing, wrapped up in 10 sentences of explanation and context and justification, the important thing gets lost. People remember the supporting details instead of the core message. Second, you hand people ammunition. Every extra word is another opportunity for someone to find something to argue with, pick apart, or use against you. The more you explain yourself, the more you're essentially defending yourself. You've positioned yourself as someone who needs to defend their position. Third, you signal weakness. Powerful people don't over-explain. They state what is. They leave space for interpretation. They don't need to convince you. They're saying it because it's true, and whether you believe it or not isn't their concern. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. This law is about economy of language. It's about precision. It's about understanding that silence is powerful, and that every word you don't say is a word your listener has to fill in themselves. When you don't explain everything, people lean in to understand. They create their own interpretation. And because they created it themselves, they own it. They believe it more deeply than if you had explained it to them. Think about how the most charismatic people communicate. They don't monologue. They make a statement. They pause. They let you sit with it. Maybe you ask a question. They give you a short answer. They pause again. The conversation has rhythm because there's space in it. Compare that to someone who fills every silence. Someone who explains. Their point then explains what they meant by that explanation, then provides examples, then clarifies the examples, then asks if you understood. That person exhausts you. You don't trust them because they seem to be trying too hard to convince you. The powerful person says, "That's not going to work." That's it. They don't explain why. They don't provide 3 reasons. They don't justify their decision. They just say no. And because they said it so simply, you believe it. You wonder what they're seeing that you're not. In negotiations, this is everything. Let's say you're negotiating a salary. The lie says you should explain your value thoroughly. List your accomplishments. Justify why you deserve the number you're asking for. Anticipate objections and address them preemptively. The law says something completely different. The law says you state your number. You state it simply. Then you shut up. You don't explain it. You don't defend it. You let them sit with it. That silence creates pressure. They're now the ones who need to explain why they can't meet that number. The power dynamic flips. In arguments with people you care about, this changes everything. When you're fighting with someone, the temptation is to explain your position thoroughly, to make them understand where you're coming from, to justify your feelings. But what actually works, saying the thing that needs to be said, and then being willing to sit in the discomfort of them not getting it immediately. I don't think this is working for me. Not followed by 10 reasons why, just that. And then you let them figure out what that means. This creates space for real conversation instead of you performing a defense. In marketing and copywriting, this is why short, punchy copy converts better than long explanations. "That's not going to work" is more powerful than. Due to various factors and considerations related to operational efficiency, we don't believe this approach aligns with our strategic objectives at this time. One makes you trust the speaker. The other makes you wonder what they're hiding. Here's the thing that flips most people's minds. Being quiet doesn't mean being weak. It means being controlled. It means you're not scrambling to prove anything. You've said what needs to be said, and you're comfortable with the silence that follows. That comfort is power. Okay. So here's what's probably happening in your brain right now. You're thinking about something you did recently, where you over-explained, or announced something you were working on, and it didn't go anywhere, or said way too much in a conversation where you should have shut up, and you're realizing how differently it could have gone if you'd operated on these laws instead. That frustration you're feeling? That's not a bad sign. That's actually the signal that this is landing for you. Because all 3 of these laws, the curated absence, the concealed intentions, the economical communication, they all have the same source. They're not about being a better person, or more ethical, or more genuine. They're about understanding how power actually moves through people and systems. And here's the thing that nobody talks about. You've been operating without this framework the entire time. You've been playing checkers while other people were playing chess, not because you're less intelligent or less capable, but because nobody taught you these rules. You were taught the opposite rules. The reason these 3 laws specifically hit different is because they validate something you already feel. You feel like you're doing everything right and getting nowhere. You're being yourself. You're working hard and showing your work. You're being honest about what you want. And it's not translating to the results you want. So you feel confused. You feel like something's wrong with you. But what if something's wrong with the framework? That's the real hook here. That's why content about the 48 laws of power gets millions of views. It's not because people want to become manipulative monsters. It's because most people have this subconscious feeling that they're missing something. They're playing by rules that don't actually lead to the outcomes they're told they lead to. And when you realize that the rules are rigged, when you realize you've been following a playbook that was designed to keep you compliant instead of powerful, that's when everything starts to make sense. The people who are winning aren't winning because they're smarter than you or because they were born into advantage. Well, some of them were, but not all of them. They're winning because they're operating on rules that actually work instead of rules that make you feel good about yourself while you stay powerless. And here's the deeper layer. Once you understand these laws, you see them everywhere. You watch your boss operate, and you see Law 4 in action. You see the most respected person in your friend group, and you see Law 16. You watch a successful entrepreneur, and you see Law 3. Suddenly, the world makes sense. You understand why people respect them. You understand why they get what they want. Let's actually break down how Law 16 works in the modern attention economy, because this one is absolutely wild when you start seeing it in action. The rule is, cultivate an air of unpredictability. Modern life is the opposite. Modern life is about being predictable, consistent, always on. If you're a creator, you're told to post at the same time every day. If you're in business, you're told to have regular office hours. If you're trying to build an audience, you're told consistency is everything. And there's truth to that on a surface level. Consistency does help with algorithms. Regular posting does build habits in your audience. But what that completely misses is that power comes from being the person who defies those rules. Think about the most magnetic people you know. They're not the ones on Instagram every day. They're the ones who post sporadically. And when they do, everyone sees it because it's rare. They're not available during business hours. They work when they want. They're not trying to be predictable. They're being selectively mysterious. And everyone wants in. Here's how this works neurologically. Your brain is designed to notice patterns and predict what comes next. Prediction creates boredom. Once you know what to expect, your brain allocates less attention. But when something breaks the pattern, when someone doesn't respond on their usual timeline, when they post when you don't expect them to, your attention snaps back. Your brain is trying to figure out the new pattern. This is why ghosting actually works in dating. I'm not endorsing it as a strategy, but the mechanism explains it. The person who's mysteriously unavailable. The person who doesn't text back immediately. The person who shows up out of nowhere. They have disproportionate power in that dynamic. The other person is constantly trying to figure them out, wondering what they're doing, checking their phone more often. Compare that to the person who's always available, the person who responds immediately, the person who's predictably there. That person has no power in the dynamic because they've become boring at a neurological level. In business, this plays out constantly. The CEO, who's accessible to everyone, has less power than the CEO, who barely anyone gets time with. The manager who's always around has less respect than the manager who's mysteriously in meetings or working on something that nobody knows about. The employee who's always visible has less influence than the employee who shows up at exactly the right moment and completely shifts something, then disappears back into their work. Absence creates mystery. Mystery creates curiosity. Curiosity creates desire. Desire creates power. Law 3 has another layer that's worth understanding because it's about something deeper than just strategic secrecy. When you're building something, a business, a creative project, a personal transformation, a career move, there's a vulnerable phase where it's not yet real. It's still fragile. It's still in the anyone could knock this over phase. And the moment you announce it, you've shifted something fundamental. Now, you're not building for yourself. You're building for the people who know about it. You're building for their approval. You're building to prove to them that you were serious. But what you should be doing is building until it's so solid, so undeniable, that when you reveal it, nobody can argue with it. It just exists. It's real. It's already won. Think about this in terms of your reputation. If you want to be known for something, being reliable, being skilled, being trustworthy, the way to build that is not through telling people you are those things. It's through consistently doing things that prove those things. And by the time people know about it, your reputation is already built. You're not building it with the announcement. The announcement is just acknowledging what's already true. Same thing with goals. The person who keeps their goals quiet and just works toward them consistently is more likely to achieve them than the person who announces the goal and then has to maintain the social motivation to finish. Here's what most people don't understand about powerful people. They're not more motivated, they're not more disciplined. They're actually working with less friction because they're not carrying the psychological weight of having to prove to other people that they're serious. They're just building quietly until it's done. Law 4 is about something that sounds simple, but is absolutely transformative when you really understand it. The law is always say less than necessary, and it works because the human mind abhors a vacuum. When you don't explain something fully, when you leave gaps, your listener's brain fills those gaps, and because they're filling the gaps themselves, they believe their own interpretation more strongly than something you explained to them. This is why conspiracy theories spread faster than facts. Facts are explained. Explanations are comprehensible and forgettable. But a conspiracy is a gap. People fill that gap with their own interpretation based on their existing beliefs. And now they're not learning something. They're discovering something. They own it. Powerful communicators understand this. They don't explain the whole thing. They state the core claim. Then they pause. They let you sit with it. They might answer a question or two, but they never completely fill in every gap. There's always something left for you to interpret. This creates several effects simultaneously. First, it makes people think you're smarter than you are. If you're not explaining everything fully, people assume you know more than what you're saying. You become mysterious. You become wise. Second, it makes people feel smarter for understanding the implied meaning. Instead of you spelling it out, they figured it out themselves. That feels good. They like you more. Third, it makes your actual point more memorable. Because it's not completely explained, people have to think about it. They hold it in their head. They talk about it. Did you hear what he said about X? Instead of immediately forgetting what was explained to them. And fourth, it protects you. Every word you say is something someone can quote out of context. Every explanation is something someone can argue with. Every justification is an invitation for someone to poke holes in your reasoning. But if you only say what's necessary, there's nothing to argue with. You've just stated a fact. How someone interprets it is their business. Now here's what's important to understand. These three laws aren't separate strategies. They're all expressions of the same underlying principle. The principle is, power comes from what you don't do, not from what you do. This completely inverts how most people think about building power. We think power is built through action, through visibility, through doing more, being more, showing up more. But the actual mechanism is the opposite. Power is built by strategic inaction, by selective visibility, by choosing not to respond, not to explain, not to engage on other people's terms. This is why the most powerful people in any room often say the least. This is why the busiest people are often less effective than the people who are selective about their time. This is why the most accomplished people don't spend time convincing you they're accomplished. They don't have to. Power isn't about convincing. It's about creating a situation where people choose to believe you without needing convincing. And once you understand that, everything starts to shift. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You're just operating on a different set of rules that actually work. Now, the full 48 laws book goes into, 48 laws. But these three are specifically the ones that contradict what you were taught most directly. That said, there are 4 other laws that are almost equally important for understanding how power actually moves. Law 1. Never outshine the master. This one seems counterintuitive, but it's about understanding that making someone feel diminished around you is the fastest way to create an enemy. The most powerful people in any situation are often not the most talented. They're the ones who make the boss feel secure. This is why the person who does the best work sometimes gets passed over. It's not because they're not good. It's because they've outshined someone and created a threat response. Law 6. Get others to work for you, but offload the credit. This is about understanding that real power is leverage. You can't do everything yourself. But the people who do everything themselves and take credit for it stay stuck. The people who build teams and give the credit away to the team, those people scale. Those people accumulate power because people want to work for them. They want to be part of their vision. Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. This sounds dark, but it's not about manipulation in the obvious way. It's about understanding that people respect what they need. If you make yourself essential, not through being the only one who can do something, but through consistently providing unique value, you have leverage. This is why specialists make more than generalists. This is why the person with one specific, rare skill is more valuable than the person who's just generally good at everything. Law 27. Play a sucker to catch a sucker and seem the supporter to catch the leader. This is about mirroring and positioning, the way you get powerful people to trust you and share things with you is by making them feel like you admire them. You're not fake about it. You're genuinely interested. But you're also positioning yourself as someone who respects them. And that dynamic is disarming. People don't guard themselves around people who clearly value them. Each one of these laws operates on the same principle. Power is not what you'd think it is. It's not about being the smartest or the most talented or the most visible. It's about understanding the actual mechanisms that create influence and respect, then operating on those mechanisms instead of the ones that feel good. Here's something interesting. Most people won't apply any of this. They'll watch this video and go back to the same behaviors that aren't working. Not because they don't understand it, but because the lie is more comfortable than the law. The lie tells you that you're good if you're authentic and transparent and always visible and always available. The lie gives you moral cover. You can struggle and tell yourself you're doing it right. You're just waiting for the right people to recognize you. The law tells you something different. The law says your struggle is probably because you've been playing by the wrong rules. The law says you need to operate differently. And that's uncomfortable, because it requires you to think about yourself differently. It requires you to see some of the things you're doing as counterproductive, even if they make you feel virtuous. But here's what happens when you understand this. You stop waiting. You stop trying to convince people. You stop over-explaining yourself. You start operating with intention. And suddenly, things start changing. People start respecting you differently. Opportunities appear. The right people start gravitating toward you without you having to convince them. And the reason is simple. You're no longer operating from a place of scarcity and need. You're operating from a place of quiet power. You're not trying to be impressive. You're just being competent and selective about who you let in. And that's the most magnetic thing there is. Okay, so knowing this is different than actually applying it. So let me be specific about how you actually start operating on these laws without becoming a sociopath. For Law 16, curate your absence. Start by being less available than you were yesterday. If you're posting every day, cut it to every other day. If you're responding to DMs immediately, let them sit for a few hours. If you're always in the group chat, step back and be more selective about when you engage. It's not about ghosting people or being rude. It's about understanding that your presence is valuable precisely because it's not constant. Watch what happens to the people closest to you when you're slightly less available. They'll actually appreciate the time with you more. The conversation will matter more. And nobody will resent you for it. They'll respect you more. For Law 3, conceal your intentions. The next project, the next goal, the next move you're planning. Don't announce it. Just work on it. Build it. Get traction. Get results. Then tell people about it when it's already real. Notice how differently people respond to a plan you're asking for feedback on versus a result you're announcing. One requires their approval. The other is just informing them of something that already exists. For Law 4, always say less. The next time you're in a conversation and you feel the urge to explain more, to defend more, to clarify your position more, don't. Say the thing that matters. Then stop talking. Let them sit with it. If they ask a follow-up, answer it simply. But don't fill the silence with extra explanation. You'll be amazed at how much more powerful your communication becomes. The real reason to understand these laws isn't to become manipulative or cold or calculating. It's to understand that there's a gap between what you were taught and what actually works. Once you understand that gap, you can make conscious choices instead of unconscious ones. You can choose to be authentic and also choose to be selectively present. You can choose to be honest and also choose not to announce everything you're working on. You can choose to communicate clearly and also choose to leave some things unsaid. These aren't contradictions, they're refinements. They're understanding that real integrity isn't about being completely transparent about everything all the time. It's about being honest when it matters and being strategic about what you reveal. The most powerful people in history weren't tyrants. Many of them were incredibly principled. But they understood that principle and power can coexist. You can be good and also be strategically mysterious. You can be ethical and also be selective about what you explain. That's the actual lesson here. So let's bring this back to where we started. You were told to be yourself. You were told to work hard and show your work. You were told that honesty is always the best policy. And you were told these things because they're comforting. They make you feel like if you just do the right thing, the right results will follow. But they won't. Not in the way you think. The real results come from understanding that power operates on different rules. And once you understand those rules, once you start operating on those rules, everything changes. Not because you're becoming a bad person, but because you're finally playing the game that's actually being played instead of the game you were told was being played. The gap between the lie and the law is where your freedom is. That's where your power lives. Everything else is just you working harder and wondering why it's not working.